Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a premier field engineer specializing in management technologies. Today's discussion is part 9 of a series focused on client apps in Microsoft Endpoint Manager, specifically Intune. In this session, we're going to focus on what I call odds and ends. They are really items that are important to talk about, but they don't fit into any unique session all on their own, kind of like we have done with focusing on Android and iOS and Windows and so on. So very important things to cover, but just kind of a collection of themes. So here's our agenda. And again, I call this odds and ends, right? Just a list of things that we're going to talk through and at least put a bullet point or two behind. Some of these we will go through very quickly and maybe have a sentence or two for them. The others or others in here will spend a little bit more time on to discuss more fully. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing that I want to chat about is this thing called app licenses. Let me go ahead and pull in the Intune console, and this is where we'll spend some time. Now, let me say also, you saw in part 5 of this series, I believe, if memory serves, that I started using the console that you see here. This is the Microsoft Endpoint Manager console, also sometimes referred to as the DMAC console, Device Manager and Configuration console. There's also the Azure Portal Intune console. All of the things that you're going to see me touch on in here can be accessed through the Azure Portal as well. This is the portal that kind of is the focus for Intune kind of things going forward. So this is where I'm going to spend our time. Okay, so specifically app licenses. So I'm going to go down to the apps section here and look at all apps. Right? Oh, sorry, that's it. All apps is wrong. I'm going to click on monitor. Right, and here's where we're going to see some of the various items for discussion right now. The first is app licenses. So app licenses gives you a pretty simple view into the licenses that you have acquired and also used for different applications you're deploying across the environment. These are typically thought of as store apps, so Google Play or the Apple Store or the Microsoft Store for business kind of licenses. And so you can see some licenses are unlimited. All the ones that I have, actually, this one isn't. But most of the ones that I have are unlimited. Again, this is my lab, so kind of boring. You'll see the ones that are in use. Some are in use, some aren't, etc. Right? And so this is one view in that will help you get licenses in and understand what they are. You can go in and add additional licenses if you want to for different apps and so on. Right, but this is a nice little view to help you kind of keep things consolidated together. You can also export it and do different things, right? So just, anyway, quick little explanation of that, but very helpful to keep track of things that have been deployed and licensed in your environment. Okay, so discovered apps. So discovered apps is also an interesting view. It's right below where we just were. So right here, okay? So discovered apps is effectively, these are apps that have been detected on Intune devices in your tenant. So basically think of this as software inventory for your tenant, right? Discovered apps is a separate report from the app installation report, right? So one thing about this, discovered apps are picked up whenever the device goes through and does a software inventory. That happens every day, or every 7 days. Right? There's no way to configure that. It's the way it's configured. And so this is not a situation where every 7 days the entire tenant refreshes, meaning if you have 100 devices on your tenant, all 100 devices are fresh with new software inventory data on the exact same time frame on your tenant. No, every device keeps track of its own 7-day cycle. So it's really 7 days from when the device was enrolled. And so that will vary, obviously, depending on the device. And so this will refresh just over that 7-day cycle randomly. Kind of like software inventory and config manager, honestly. So you can, by default, software inventory and config manager set to every 7 days, but whenever your client gets installed, that 7-day cycle starts. It will randomize So some clients may put up their software inventory on Monday, some on Wednesdays, some on Saturdays, right? It just depends. Same thing with Intune. The only exception to that is if we have something called where we have things happening, software distribution happening through the Intune management extension. So in a previous session, I talked to you about the Intune management extension and how that's used for deploying things like PowerShell scripts or Win32 apps and things like that. For that particular piece, the refresh is every 24 hours, right? So just FYI, but here's where you can see the discovered apps that have been found in your environment, right? Okay, moving right along. So app install status. So this is what you would expect, right? Here's where you can see the status of all the applications that you've installed, right? Just right here, still in the monitoring node, and install successes, install failures, device, user, whatever the case may be, right? Okay, real quick, and then finally, app protection status. So in the same node, last one there, here we have the app protection status. So this, again, we did a whole session on app protection and also MAM in a previous session, which is kind of sometimes coupled with app protection, not exactly the same. But either way, we did sessions on those. Here's where you would see the status of any app protection policies that are deployed. Mine, I have just one from probably the work we did before, the demos that we did before, right? But a nice little dashboard view to be able to see details of your app protection status. All right, so moving on. iOS app provisioning profiles. So this is interesting, right? So we have app provisioning profiles here on the main menu, and we also have them right here. It's the same exact thing, right? So what are iOS app provisioning profiles? So when you have, so specifically provisioning profiles apply to line of business apps. These are apps that are developed by you or a party, a third party that you might hire to develop an app. And these provisioning profiles allow certain configurations to be applied to the app. So think of a line of business app that may have different ways that it can run based on configuration. The app provisioning profile is a good way to inject those differences, right? Now, a couple of details about the line of business app. Again, these are iOS specific, so iPad, iPhone, whatever, and you can deploy these. There is a specific format that you need for these provisioning profiles. It's a .mobile provisioning, or sorry, .mobile provision is the extension on the file, and these will go down along with the line of business app. So the line of business app and the app provisioning profile will need to be signed by an enterprise cert in order to be accepted by the device. That's true for any app that you would put on the device. It's just normally, if it's not your app, if it's from the store or wherever, the app is already signed. In this case, you would use and you would sign it with your enterprise cert so that it would be accepted by the device. So a couple of little details here. The enterprise cert used to sign apps typically lasts for 3 years. The provisioning profiles will expire after a single year. So one of the things that can be done with the provisioning profile is to use the provisioning profile effectively to prevent your app from expiring, right? To use those and renew the expiration and so on, right? There's more detail to that, but we'll leave that for now. So the provisioning profiles essentially give you the ability to interact with the deployed app at a level beyond just clicking and picking choices in the app and other kinds of things. Again, a bigger topic, but we'll leave it there. Okay, so pull that back out of the screen, and the next one, S mode, supplemental policies. This one's interesting, right? Let's come back in here and go back to the main apps screen and scroll down. So this is what we're talking about here. So S modes, this specifically applies to Windows 10 S mode devices. So Windows 10 S is a lockdown operating system that only runs store apps. So lots of folks might want to consider that for a kind of focused use scenario, but there are still a lot of Win32 apps that people might want to leverage for their business needs. And so these policies, in brief, will allow you to enable running execution of certain Win32 apps on even a Windows 10S mode device. Right? Now, to do that, you would need to make sure that you have the Windows Defender application control PowerShell tools, that you sign your app with something like Device Guard signing service or sign tool or a code signing cert that you might have, whatever. But with all of those, you can actually enable Win32 apps to run on the device. Right? I don't have a Windows S device to show you, but wanted to at least point that out because it could be beneficial in certain scenarios for sure. Okay, moving right along here, and the next item in the list is the section policies for Office apps. So this one is interesting. Scroll down a little bit more. So we have talked about previously how we can use Intune to deploy Office apps, right? This section allows us to configure policies for Office apps. So let me just go through for a minute and create. So I give it a name, scroll down, and there's 3 sections here. There's assignments I need to apply. There's groups I need to apply the assignment to. And then there's policies I can configure. So the first thing is I'm going to decide where this is going to apply. This configuration policy is going to apply. I'm just going to choose all users, right? And then pull back over to the left and move on. The next is a group that I want to apply it to. So I'm just going to search for a group this way. Let's see if I come up with any. I know if I do, yeah, I'll just use this. So all users, I'm just going to choose all users. So again, as a demo, you might not want to do this in your environment, but just to work through here, right? And then finally, I get down to my configure policies node. So if I scroll back to the right, then you'll see the configure policies node is loading, and it's going to ask me for a policy name. If I know the policy name, I can search for it. Otherwise, I can browse through the different policies that you might want to configure and select them and go configure them and do whatever you might want with them, etc. So whatever the case may be, right? And so anyway, so with all of that, I would ultimately be able to save my configuration. I could then deploy it out to devices to affect how the Office experience is on managed devices, right? So kind of a cool capability there. Okay. And then finally, app categories. So this one is just effectively putting a label on top of an application. So if we scroll on down here, we'll go back to apps and scroll on down, we'll see the app categories, right? So all of these are predefined app categories. You can add your own if you like, and again, it's just a label. It's a bucket that you can assign apps to. It's nice for being able to group apps together. If you have users in your company portal that are trying to install the apps, they can search by categories or see things that way and so on. So it's just a nice little ability to enhance the experience by grouping things that might be of common interest together. Right? Okay. And then now this next section is, again, where I called out at the beginning of the discussion that we have the Azure Portal, and we also have this portal that I'm showing you and using now. The items that I'm going to show you next are ones that are not in the apps section of the console, but they are in the client apps section of the Azure Portal. So for that reason, I'm showing them to you here as well. Okay, so let's just do the first one, branding and customization. Let me pull back in the portal here. And so for our purposes in this console, we're going to move down to tenant administration. And then we're going to scroll down and we have branding and customization. So this is specifically where you can personalize, if you will, the company portal that runs on devices. So I had a good question from a group that I was talking about this with, and they wanted to know, does this just affect the website, right? So there's no, the answer is no. It affects the company portal wherever it is, however it's loaded. But it's a good point, because typically we think of the company portal as being an app that runs on your Windows, iOS, or Android device, and in fact it is. But you can also launch a website to get to the company portal, even if you're not on a device that's managed, to see different things. So you'll see that there's customizations down here. I can show you different things that I've done, branded it to Tailspin Toys, set it to the green theme, whatever. And once I set this, I can go preview what it will look like. So this is actually loading the company portal on the web, right? So there will be differences between the company portal on the web and the company portal on a device, but at least it will give you a view into how things are. And you can see Tailspin Toys, you can see help desk information, you can see details in here about IT contact, phone number, all of this are details that I actually personalize in this branding section right here. Okay, all right, so that's branding. Now, also we have a few other things. Let's dig in a little bit deeper. Go back to the portal. So if I scroll up under, I'm still under tenant admin. If I go under connectors and tokens, then you'll see Microsoft Store for Business, and you see that I am currently active. I have a last sync of today, right, this morning. And so if you do not have the connection between Intune and the Store for Business, you can easily set it up by just following these couple of steps, right? Now, I did a session talking about the integration between Store for Business and Config Manager that I did a lot of detail into the Store for Business, showed how to work with online, offline apps, described what they were, described how to deal with licensing, how to download the binaries for offline apps, how to configure them in the Config Manager console. I'm not going to go into that level of detail here. I do want to show you, though, how easy it is to integrate with the Store for Business. So the first thing that you have to do in order to link, if you will, the Store for Business that you have in your Intune console is to sign into the Store for Business. And so by clicking this link, Open the Store for Business, allows you to do that. It's going to bring in the Store for Business. I'm going to click Sign In, and I may be prompted, I may not, it depends. But we're signing in. Okay, so I wasn't prompted, and now I know that I'm in my Store for Business because I have Tailspin Toys store. What I want to do is go to Manage, and then go ahead, and when that comes up, let's go down to Settings here, right, and Device Settings, and then specifically, there we go. Come on. Distribute. Is that right? Yeah, management tool. This is what I'm looking for. So it's there, right? So one of the things that you have to do is approve your management tool to have access to the Store for Business for synchronization. For Intune, it's easy because Intune is already here. It is inactive by default. You have to go ahead and activate it, right? In my case, I've already activated it, so it says deactivate, but you have to activate the integration, and then you're good to go. You can synchronize, do whatever you want to do. If you're using something else besides Intune, then you have the ability to add a management tool. So if you watch the video I did on Config Manager integration, this is where you would put in the detail for the website that's needed for Config Manager to know how to get to the store, but that's a different discussion. We won't go into it. With Intune, it's really, really, really easy. So you see that I'm already active, right? And so because I'm active, then once you have an active status up here, then all you need to do is go choose what language you want, and then you can kick off a synchronization with the applications that you've approved in the Store for Business, and those will actually show up. Let me show you under apps. And if I look at all apps, you'll see there's definitely some from the Store for Business, like this one. This one is specifically one that I know I pulled in, and a few others through the list that will just show up in your view here, and you could then go deploy if you so choose. All right. So let's move back to tenant administration and connectors and tokens. So that's store for business. All right. What else is under here? So if we move forward, Windows Enterprise Search. Okay. Well, actually, I'm going to talk about this one a little bit different. I'm going to fast forward a bit because there's a Windows Enterprise Cert, a Windows Symantec Cert, and then Windows sideloading keys. Let me go back for a minute. So if we start at the bottom and work our way up, Windows sideloading keys. So what are these? So sideloading itself is something that happens when you're trying to load your own application onto a Windows device. Whether that's Windows 8, Windows 10, doesn't matter. Sideloading started in Windows 8. There were some details with sideloading in Windows 8 that do not apply to Windows 10. Right? So in Windows 8, you needed to have a key that you could load onto the device that would enable it to receive side-loaded applications. Right? That's where you could go get the key. You could store it in Intune. You have a number of activations that you can apply. So this can go against 100 devices, and I can deploy it out, and I can then enable up to 100 with this one key Windows 8 devices to receive side-loaded applications. Well, that's still true for Windows 8. Windows 10, we changed that. And so there is no key required for Windows 10. So if you're doing side-loading in Windows 10 then, and not in Windows 8 at all, then this doesn't apply, right? There is a GPO setting, and there's a couple other places you can set it to enable the ability of a Windows 10 device to receive side-loaded applications. And certain versions of Windows 10 will allow that by default, right? So just know that, right? If you're doing that kind of line of business application, side-loading, and so on. Another piece, though, that still exists with side-loading or with line of business applications, trying to get those onto the devices, is the need to have those applications signed. And so that's where we get into the Windows Enterprise Certificate. So this essentially is a code signing cert that you can import from your location that provided the cert, either your own certificate authority, a third-party certificate authority, whatever it is, load that in, deploy that to your devices, and then applications signed with that code signing cert can be leveraged. So even though you don't need the side-loading key on Windows 10 anymore, you still need to sign those applications, and this enterprise certificate will help you do that. Similarly, you may need a Symantec certificate. So this is specifically for Windows 8.1 Apex files and Windows 10 mobile devices where you would need a Symantec cert. The Symantec cert is also discussed as a part of the whole side-loading thing in Windows 8.1 and, again, Windows 10 mobile devices, right? So this is another place where if you are doing loading of line of business apps on those types of devices, you might indeed need a Symantec cert as well. And here's where you can import it and manage it, and so on. Right? Okay, so the side loading, a little bit more detail, but hopefully that gives you the baseline of what it is in case you need it. And then finally, we have the managed Google Play, and I'll also talk about the Apple VPP tokens, kind of at the same time. So if we scroll down, we have managed Google Play. So this is where you can set up your association between this tenant and Google Play. You see that I do have a status of success. I'm good to go. It's been a while since I've actually synchronized because I haven't done anything in this for quite some time, as you can tell, since 2019. But here's where you can just walk through, opening up the Google Play Store, getting all that configuration done. Finally, you can synchronize in apps from there. So essentially what you do in the Google Play Store is you would approve applications from the Google Play Store that you would then be able to deploy through Intune to your devices, right? And that's this whole section. The Apple VPP tokens is similar, except with Apple VPP, this works in conjunction with Apple Business Manager, Apple School Manager, Apple Business Manager is the renamed DEP experience for Apple enrollment. So you would need your devices to be DEP enrolled or Apple Business Manager enrolled or Apple School Manager enrolled, right? And then you can volume purchase apps for those devices, deploy them to those devices, and go from there. So all three of these are similar, right? So we started with the Microsoft Store for Business. You can certainly do management and approval and deployment of apps and all that and synchronization from the Microsoft Store, just like you can with the Manage Google Play, just like you can with the Apple VPP. All similar, little bit of difference between them, but all very similar. All right. And so with that, I've kind of walked through the features that I wanted to touch on. Again, none of them required lots and lots of explanation, though we could have gone deeper even on some of them. We could have expanded our discussion with the Microsoft Store for Business, certainly could have expanded our discussion on side loading and different things, but hopefully gave the bullets and the nuggets that you need to understand what these are. And so with that, we'll wrap our session, and we'll see you next time.